A very warm good morning to all of you. It's a pleasant Wednesday morning and we're back once again with a fresh edition of Breakfast News. I'm Preeti, with me is Anil. And in the next 1 hour, we'll get you through everything that's making it to the headlines. We'll get you national, international updates. We'll get you sports updates, updates from the world of business, a web review and a health tip as well. Enough to keep you engaged for the next 1 hour to make sure your tea or coffee right in the morning tastes even better.
Well, 60 minutes of action here, power packed. We cut all the noise, get you news as it happens on the ground. A big focus on the election states, on how things are brewing amongst all the political parties. Lots to look forward to in the next 60 minutes. Let's get started with the top stories at the top of this hour.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin hold summit-level talks. New partnership forged in ICT, digital education sectors and environment field. Prime Minister Modi also holds telephonic conversation with his Portuguese counterpart, reviews bilateral relations and COVID situation in both the countries.
Union Cabinet clears setting up of new bank for infrastructure development with 20,000 crore capital infusion. Finance Minister also asserts decision to privatize banks is a well thought out one, assures that interest of existing employees will be protected at all cost.
Railways Minister says investment into rail infrastructure and services is welcome, but states that Indian Railways will not be privatized. Parliament passes important bill to raise upper limit for permitting abortions to 24 weeks in special cases. BJP issues whip to all its MPs to be present in Lok Sabha today.
After Maharashtra, Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh take steps to check the rise of COVID numbers, night curfew to be imposed from today in many cities including Ahmedabad and Bhopal. 8 states reporting spike in fresh COVID cases. Maharashtra reports the highest rise with 15,000 cases. Over 19 lakh vaccines administered yesterday.
Prime Minister of UK Boris Johnson announces his visit to India next month. Says visit aimed at strengthening bilateral ties. Also invites India to the G7 summit to be held in UK this June.
The EU's medicines regulator says firmly convinced the benefits of AstraZeneca's vaccines outweigh the potential risk. Insists no evidence linking vaccines to blood clots after several European nations suspend the shot over health fears. Meanwhile, total COVID-19 deaths across Europe crosses the grim mark of 9 lakh.
India loses to England by 8 wickets in the third T20. Visitors lead the 5-match series by 2-1.
Real Madrid and Manchester City reached the quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League. In the round of 16, City beat German club Mönchengladbach 2-0, while Real Madrid defeat Atlanta 3-1.
All right, those are the top stories we're tracking this hour. Let's get to the news in detail now.
Well, starting first up with the top story, they're coming from the virtual summit between the Indian Prime Minister and the Finland Prime Minister. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Prime Minister of Finland, Sanna Marin, met during a virtual summit on Tuesday afternoon. The focus was on the immediate challenge of the pandemic and vaccine management. The two leaders also discussed the key areas of partnership, particularly in the areas of new technologies in education, innovation, clean energy, quantum computing and artificial intelligence. The two leaders emphasized upon the importance of multilateral rules-based international order.
फिनलैंड और भारत दोनों ही एक रूल्स बेस्ड, पारदर्शी, मानवतावादी और लोकतांत्रिक वैश्विक व्यवस्था में विश्वास रखते हैं.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi stressing on joint commitment to democratic, rules-based and humanitarian world order. containing COVID-19, ushering global economic revival and tackling climate change were the big-ticket areas that Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin discussed at their first summit-level talks.
इस पैंडेमिक के दौरान भारत ने अपने डोमेस्टिक संघर्ष के साथ साथ विश्व की जरूरतों का भी ध्यान रखा है। पिछले साल हमने 150 से अधिक देशों को दवाइयां और अन्य आवश्यक सामग्री भेजे थे और हाल में हमने लगभग 70 देशों को भारत में बनी वैक्सीन की 58 मिलियन से अधिक डोजेज पहुंची है।
I want to recognize the efforts of India in extensive vaccination program, and you are among the world leading vaccine manufacturers.
Prime Minister Marin lauded Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership all throughout the pandemic. In her opening remarks, the Prime Minister spelled out the core areas of cooperation between both countries, such as utilization of new technologies in education, innovation, clean energy, quantum computing and artificial intelligence.
मुझे प्रसन्नता है कि आज हम आईसीटी, मोबाइल टेक्नोलॉजी और डिजिटल एजुकेशन के क्षेत्र में एक नई पार्टनरशिप घोषित कर रहे हैं।
I see that we have good commercial cooperation possibilities with India in the field of technology and research. I expect the fresh memorandum of cooperation between the Finnish and Indian ministers of environment.
Prime Minister Modi highlighted actions taken by India to meet its climate change commitments. He urged Finland to join the International Solar Alliance, ISA, and Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, CDRI.
रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी में हमने 2030 तक 450 गीगावाट इंस्टॉल कैपेसिटी का लक्ष्य रखा है। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय सहयोग बढ़ाने के लिए हमने इंटरनेशनल सोलर अलायंस और कोएलिशन फॉर डिजास्टर रेजिलिएंट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जैसे इनिशिएटिव भी लिए हैं।
Around 100 Finnish companies are actively operating in India in various sectors such as telecom, elevators, machinery and energy, including renewable energy.
The two Prime Ministers announced a high-level dialogue on education between the education ministries of both the countries. In this direction, the two leaders welcomed the proposal to renew the MOU between consortium of 10 Finnish universities and 23 IITs for the next 5 years. They also announced a digital partnership in future ICT, future mobile technologies and digital education. They announced a sustainability partnership involving renewable and clean energy, circular economy and sustainable mobility.
Around 30 Indian companies are also active in Finland, mainly in IT, auto components and hospitality sectors. This virtual summit will give a major push to India's Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign. Arun Sharma's report, DD India.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi had a telephonic call with Prime Minister of the Portuguese Republic, Antonio Luis Santos da Costa. The two leaders reviewed the COVID-19 pandemic situation and noted the importance of quick and equitable distribution of vaccines for ending of the pandemic. Prime Minister Modi briefed Prime Minister Costa on India's vaccination drive as well as the support extended by India to more than 70 countries so far. He assured that India would continue supporting the vaccination efforts of other countries to the best of its capacities. Both the leaders reviewed bilateral relations and expressed satisfaction at the positive momentum in the India-Portugal partnership in the last few years. They also reviewed preparations for the first ever India-European Union leaders meeting, scheduled to take place under Portuguese presidency of the European Union in Porto in May 2021. Prime Minister Modi had a telephonic call with Prime Minister of Portugal, Antonio Luis Santos da Costa. And on your screens, we have the details of the meeting, of the conversation.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be visiting Bangladesh on March 26th and 27th. This visit is in connection with the commemoration of three big events: the Mujib Borsho, the birth centenary of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, 50 years of the establishment of diplomatic ties between India and Bangladesh, and 50 years of Bangladesh's war of liberation. Prime Minister had last visited Bangladesh in 2015. During the visit, Prime Minister will attend the National Day program of Bangladesh on March 26th as the guest of honor. The program of the Prime Minister, apart from holding bilateral consultations with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, also includes a call on the President of Bangladesh, His Excellency Mohammad Abdul Hamid. The visit of the Prime Minister to Bangladesh will be the first visit to a foreign country since the outbreak of the COVID pandemic. This highlights the priority India attaches to Bangladesh.
In a big boost to infrastructure development in the country, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced setting up of the Development Finance Institution as was planned in Union Budget 2021. There will be an initial capital infusion and that will stand at rupees 20,000 crore. Also, the DFI is expected to raise long-term funds for infrastructure development in the country. We'll get to more in this report.
The Union Cabinet has cleared the setting up of a national bank to fund infrastructure and developmental activities in the country. The Finance Minister said that a Development Finance Institution, DFI, will take up measures for financing long-term infrastructure and development projects in the country. Capital infusion will be of about 20,000 crore rupees. Initial grant will be of 5,000 crore rupees to be provided in this year's budget. There will be certain tax benefits to be given for a 10-year period. The government further plans to issue securities for DFIs that will reduce its cost of funding. This will in turn have a positive impact on the bond market in India. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for his constant gentle nudge on setting up a development finance institution.
The Cabinet has taken a decision to set up a development finance institution through which we will have an institution, an institutional arrangement which will help in raising long-term funds. The budget provides for the initial amount. I had announced it in the budget saying capital infusion from our side would be about 20,000 crores and initial grant of 5,000 will also be made, and this year itself capital infusion is 20,000 crores. Additional increments of the grant will also be made within the 5,000 limit that has been given to the Finance Minister. And through this, we expect to raise considerable amount using this lever from the market.
In response to a media query, the Finance Minister assured that not all banks will be privatized. She added that wherever privatization happens, the interest of bank employees in those public sector banks will be protected.
The interest of the workers, interest of those who have put in services over the decades will absolutely be protected. Whether it is their salaries, whether it is their scale, whether it is their pension, it will all be taken care of. And above all, the first premise that I would like to put before you is even when we speak of privatization or disinvestment, we recognize that each one of those units perform for the economy. So if there is a coal unit or a thermal unit.
Countering Congress leader Rahul Gandhi's tweet on privatization of banks, the Finance Minister blamed that the previous UPA government is responsible for the deteriorating condition of banks.
Today, public sector banks are loss-making and prompt corrective actions are bringing them out because of the telephone banking which happened during his time. His daddy would have probably nationalized the banks, but nationalizing of loss in the banks was during UPA's time. And I would want to add one more. Nationalizing corruption is what they did.
With the merger of several PSU banks, the central government plans to move towards reducing the government's stake in them so that their functioning could be improved and participation of investors could be increased. The decision to set up a separate bank to fund infrastructure projects will have far-reaching impact on the development journey of the country. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, moving to some updates from Parliament now, starting first up with the government and the Congress trading charges over sedition cases in Lok Sabha, while the Railways Minister says that investment into rail infrastructure and services is welcome, but states clearly that the Indian Railways will not be privatized. Meanwhile, Parliament has passed a bill to raise the upper limit for permitting abortions to 24 weeks in special cases. Here's more.
Both houses of parliament witnessed smooth conduct of proceedings on Tuesday. Several important issues were raised during the day. Members' questions were answered during the question hour in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Congress and the government on Tuesday engaged in a war of words in the Lok Sabha over sedition cases, with the opposition party alleging stringent law is being misused. Drawing a sharp retort from Minister of State for Home G. Kishan Reddy, who asked it not to lecture others on democracy, Reddy slammed the Congress party on the issue of violation of human rights. Replying to a question by Congress MP, the minister said the Modi government has maintained the figures of sedition cases separately, unlike the earlier Congress regimes.
सेडिशन केस के बारे में जब कांग्रेस सरकार थी, अलग कोई डाटा नहीं रखे हैं, वो पूरा जो आईपीसी क्राइम्स रिकॉर्ड्स रखते हैं उसमें ही मिलाकर रखे थे। हम गर्व के साथ बताना चाहते हैं, मोदी सरकार आने के बाद जो सेडिशन केसेस का अलग डाटा 14 के बाद हम ही अलग डाटा देश के सामने रख रहे।
Replying in the Lok Sabha, Union Minister for Railways Piyush Goyal assured that Indian Railways will not be privatized. Dispelling all doubts, the minister alleged that fears raked up by the opposition are unfounded.
मैं स्पष्ट कर दूं, भारतीय रेल कोई कभी प्राइवेटाइज नहीं होगी। भारतीय रेल भारत की संपत्ति है, भारत की रहेगी, भारत के लोगों की रहेगी।
On the other hand, in the upper house, Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman informed the Rajya Sabha that the Members of Parliament Local Area Development Scheme Fund for 2019-20 had been released by the Ministry of Finance and the funds have been sent to the districts. However, the Finance Minister made it clear that no new MP-led funds will be given in the years 2020-21 and 2021-22 due to the coronavirus pandemic. In response to a question, Minister of State for Finance Anurag Thakur said that inflation was under control over the last 7 years, while MSP for farmers has been increased.
सरकार के पिछले 7 वर्षों में महंगाई दर औसतन कम रही है और जितना रहना चाहिए उसके आसपास रही, लेकिन इसके बावजूद सर हमने एमएसपी के दाम जहां पर किसानों के लिए बढ़ाए तो दलहन तिलहन का उत्पादन हिंदुस्तान में ज्यादा बढ़ा रहा, इंपोर्ट भी कम करनी पड़ी।
Replying to a discussion on the working of the Jal Shakti Ministry, Gajendra Singh Shekhawat said that work is underway in projects worth 1.91 lakh crore rupees under the flagship Jal Jeevan mission. He said that the centre is in touch with the states for effective implementation of projects. Parliament has passed the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Bill 2020, with the Rajya Sabha approving it on Tuesday. Lok Sabha had passed the bill in March last year. The bill provides for an outer limit of 24 weeks for medical termination of pregnancy. The limit is in sync with the advancements in medical technology that allows for the removal of fetus at a relatively advanced stage of pregnancy. With Parliament team, Bureau Report, DD India.
The Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha witnessed many discussions over important issues yesterday. Some updates from Parliament for today. Dr. S. Jaishankar, External Affairs Minister, will make a statement regarding India's vaccine Maitri initiative today in both the houses. Also in Lok Sabha, there will be a discussion and voting on demands for grants under the control of Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs for 2021-22. The outstanding demands for grants in respect of the Union Budget for 2021-22 will also be submitted to the vote of the House. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman to move the Appropriation Number 2 Bill 2021 for consideration and passage. In Rajya Sabha, the working of Ministry of Railways, Tourism and Food Processing Industries will be discussed today. Meanwhile, BJP has issued a whip asking all its MPs to be present in the lower house today. And to get us more on the Parliament proceedings today, our correspondent Vikas Sarthi is joining us. Vikas, yesterday we saw business being transacted in the houses. We've given a broad outline of what all is to be taken up in both the houses. You spell out more details. Also, we tell our viewers that BJP has issued a whip for its members in the lower house today. Spell out more details.
The functioning of both the houses concerned today, there will be a discussion on the working of Ministry of Railways, Ministry of Tourism and Ministry of food processing industries in the upper house. And as you were telling that Minister of External Affairs will give a statement in both the houses regarding the vaccine Maitri initiative. This is a very important initiative. In fact, in first 50 days, India has supplied vaccine to more than 70 countries, out of which some of the countries with weaker economies were given these vaccines on pure humanitarian basis. So MEA will give a statement on the current position of that initiative. Apart from that, Lok Sabha also have some discussion, and reports of several standing committees will also be tabled in the Rajya Sabha. In Lok Sabha, the finance minister will introduce and will seek the passage of appropriation bill. Yesterday we also saw some business, very important business in both the houses. In fact, one of the bill, the termination of medical termination of pregnancy bill was being demanded by not only the medical fraternity. Some petitions were also filed in different high courts and Supreme Court. So that was a very important bill which was passed yesterday, and today we expect that both the houses will function smoothly as we witnessed yesterday.
Okay, because coming to the point, after that 4-day break, there has been smooth conduct of business. What's transpired in the 4-day break, that things in both the houses seems to be running pretty smoothly.
Well, Anil, it seems there is a strategy of opposition MPs. They want to be seen as raising the issues related to common man. So it happens whenever these kind of issues are raised in media or in other news platforms, opposition tries to register its presence. So they wanted to give a message to their supporters, to their voters, that they are raising issues related to common man, and especially when there are assembly polls in 4 states and 1 UT. So opposition didn't want to lose that opportunity, and all these things are part of their strategy to register their presence and to register their protest on the issues related to inflation or rising prices of petroleum products.
All right, mere tactics to register their presence in both the houses. Thank you so much, Vikas, for joining us with those updates. We'll come back to you again during the day.
Well, moving on now to the poll-bound states and taking a look at all the updates from the four poll-bound states and the Union Territory of Puducherry. Starting first up with the Bharatiya Janata Party on Tuesday releasing a list of 9 candidates for the Puducherry Assembly elections. Congress also released the names of 14 candidates for the assembly polls in the Union Territory of Puducherry. The Union Territory of Puducherry will go to the polls in a single phase on April 6th. The counting of votes will take place on May 2nd. Meanwhile, campaigning is gaining momentum in the poll-bound states of West Bengal, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Assam and Puducherry. Today is the last day for withdrawal of nominations for the second phase of Assam and West Bengal polls. 30 assembly constituencies in West Bengal and 39 assembly constituencies in Assam will go to poll in the second phase on the 1st of next month.
And today is the last date for withdrawal of nomination for the second phase of assembly elections in Assam. Nomination papers of 28 of the total 408 candidates who filed nominations for the second phase were rejected during the scrutiny yesterday. For the second phase of the elections to be held on 1st of April, 408 candidates had filed nomination papers in 39 seats. The last date for filing nomination papers for the third phase is 19th March. Nomination papers will be scrutinized on 20th March. Names can be withdrawn by 22nd of March. And Yogesh is joining us from Assam to get us more on that. Yogesh, political process has already kick-started. Last date of withdrawal of nomination for the second phase of elections will be held today. You talk more about how are political temperatures rising in the state. Talk more about the electoral battle this time around.
Good morning, Preeti. Good morning, Anil. As far as the nominations concerned, today is definitely the last day of withdrawal nomination for the second phase, which are going to be held on the 1st of April. As of now, what we have been given to understand that 377 candidates, their nomination had been found valid by the Election Commission. Now it remains to be seen the withdrawal, how many candidates are in the fray. We know that around 267 candidates are in the fray for the first phase. Now coming to other points, as far as political momentum are concerned, as Anil was rightly saying, that political moments and also campaigns are getting new momentum here in all the constituencies, all 47 constituencies. We know that they are going to poll on the first phase, that is 27th of March. Now today, very importantly, let me tell you that Yogi Adityanath is going to hold rallies in three different three different locations, and we know that some part of Assam, basically if you just go to Upper Assam and also North Assam, some areas that like Tinsukia, like Dibrugarh, these are the areas where large number of migrants like from Hindi belt, basically they are migrated here. They are here working as a daily wager also and also on contract basis. So a large number of people are in these areas are from Hindi belt, and that is the reason why Manoj Tiwari has also been placed here as a star campaigner, and he is also going to hold election rally here in Tinsukia. So basically all the strategies are there in the place, and all the parties are trying their best to convince the voters. As far as coming to a different aspect, also the Congress, Bhupesh Baghel, the Chief Minister of Chhattisgarh, he is also scheduled to hold a rally in Sharaidev area. So the things are just going, and all the promises, all the assurances are just on the place. One also important thing, Amit Shah, the Home Minister of India, has also addressed a rally, and he had assured the people of Assam that 5 points that the BJP will be working on, that is security, self-reliance, culture, and also there are also two other points that is they have mentioned, that is security, self-reliance, peace, prosperity, and culture. These are basically the 5 points that Amit Shah has pointed out, and has asserted that when BJP comes to power, it retains the power, and they will ensure that the state will flourish with all these points. On the other end, we also said that Congress has leveled some allegations. Now also one thing that I must like to mention here, that the alliance between the AIUDF and Congress, which is in fact has almost proven the bottleneck for Congress, because some voices are coming within the Congress party on this alliance, because we have been seeing that back-to-back attacks from all the BJP leaders, including Devendra Fadnavis, former CM of Maharashtra, and all the senior leaders, including JP Nadda, Maharashtra MP Chief Minister also Shivraj Singh Chauhan, and also other leaders, Rajnath Singh also defense minister. So all are just attacking Congress on this issue. Now the main issue is even Congress cannot raise this issue of protecting indigenous people, because we know that when this party UDF was formed in 2005, the main purpose, the sole purpose of this party was to protect the interest of the migrants from East Pakistan and Bangladesh. So Congress is also not able to raise this issue very confidently. So that is also one important point.
It's an important issue, especially for the Congress, which has now got into a combination or a combine there with that particular front, the political regional front there in Assam. But is frontier politics, or if I may say very simply, identity politics, that's going to be a forefront, especially when it comes to the state of Assam?
It's a very good question, in fact, Anil. As far as identity politics is concerned, we know that India, has been very familiar with identity politics since Mahatma Gandhi and to Bhimrao Ambedkar. The identity politics and basically symbolism plays a key role in election. Now, one thing also I would like to add, that two parties, basically Raizar Party and also Assam Jatiya Parishad, these two parties which have emerged. Now the thing is, now people are asking their ideologies. Earlier it was not happening, because this party was these parties were emerged in the backdrop of a CA protest, anti-CA protest. Now the thing is, people are asking about their ideologies. What are their ideologies? Because recently what we are witnessing here, that some farmer leaders are also campaigning in Shivsagar, where Akhil Gogoi is the candidate. Now the thing is, CA, anti-CA or NRC may be an issue, but there are a lot of issues apart from those two factors. Like we know that development is also the main front issue. We know that flood issues in majority of parts of Assam, and also these districts like on the bank at the bank of these districts like Dibrugarh and also other areas which are affected badly and severely by floods. So people are also hoping, what are your plans about these issues? So that may be a factor, but there are a lot of issues from development to regional issues. From also BJP has launched 3 national issues that BJP has successfully sorted out, from Ram Mandir to Triple Talaq to 370. So a lot of issues that BJP has, and also in lockdown, during the lockdown, how many things were done for the people of Assam. So a lot of things are there, and now people are asking about their ideologies. So the battle is going to be more interested in the day to come, and we are witnessing a very different sense of election fever here in Assam.
Okay, one quick word before I let you go. Clearly talking about Congress having difficulty managing its house. Is that also the absence, after a very long time in an assembly election in Assam, you see, no Tarun Gogoi there, the late Tarun Gogoi. Is that a big miss, that the Congress looks like a divided house in the state of Assam?
See, Anil, whenever a party shifts its stand, it makes some difficulties, and it also puts a lot of questions before the party. So this is what exactly happening. Coming to your question, we know that Tarun Gogoi never allied with AIUDF. We know that the party AIUDF was formed in 2005, and we know that Tarun Gogoi was a very popular CM, and also around more than 10 years he has ruled in Assam. He was in power. So, but he has never allied with AIUDF. Now, when the same party is now aligning with that party, so definitely it is creating some sort of disturbances, some sort of uncomfortableness between within the party, within the Congress party. That is what your question is. So you are right that that is basically a very very interesting thing in Assam at this point in time, in this particular election.
All right, Assam politics throwing interesting and different options. Thank you so much, Yogesh, for joining us with those updates. That was our correspondent, Yogesh Sheetal, measuring for us the political temperatures in the state. We'll keep you updated. Up next, let's get a quick update on the COVID-19 situation. Yes, after Maharashtra and Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh takes steps to check the rise of COVID numbers. Night curfew has been imposed in Bhopal and Indore. 8 states reporting spike in fresh COVID cases. Maharashtra reports the highest rate with 15,000 new cases. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will chair a meeting with chief ministers of various states to take stock of the COVID situation in the country. This and more in this report.
With the surge in COVID-19 cases in Maharashtra, the centre has cautioned the states. Union Health Secretary has warned that Maharashtra was at the beginning of a second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. In a letter to the Maharashtra government, the Union Health Secretary asked the state to focus on containment strategies and to scale up the pace of vaccination campaign, especially in districts witnessing a sharp increase in infections. Maharashtra has reported the highest daily new cases at 15,051. Meanwhile, Maharashtra government has issued new COVID-19 guidelines. All cinema halls, single screens and multiplexes, hotels, restaurants to operate on 50% capacity. No social, cultural, political, religious gatherings to be allowed. Not more than 50 people will be allowed to be present only for the purpose of weddings. Not more than 20 people will be allowed to be present for the purpose of performance of last rites. All offices except related to health and other essential services shall work with 50% of attendance. In view of the recent spike in coronavirus cases, the Gujarat government has decided to enforce the night curfew in 4 major cities of the state and extended its timings by 2 hours with effect from March 17th in a bid to contain the sudden surge in COVID-19 cases. The curfew will now remain in force in Ahmedabad, Surat, Vadodara and Rajkot from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. from 17th of March till the 31st of this month. Meanwhile, the remaining 3 T20 cricket matches between India and England in Ahmedabad will be held in empty stadium.
कोरोना की वर्तमान परिस्थिति को ध्यान में रखते हुए गुजरात क्रिकेट एसोसिएशन के मैनेजमेंट ने आगामी 16, 18 और 20 को खेले जाने रही T20 की मैचों बिना प्रेक्षकों के ही खेले जाएगी.
In view of a rise in coronavirus cases, the Madhya Pradesh government has also issued new guidelines. Travellers from Maharashtra must undergo 7 days of home quarantine. Goods trucks from Maharashtra will be allowed after the thermal screening of drivers and others. Markets in 8 cities, Jabalpur, Gwalior, Ujjain, Ratlam, Burhanpur, Chhindwara, Betul, Khargone to shut at 10 p.m. from March 17th. A night curfew in capital Bhopal and also in Indore from March 17th. In the meantime, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will chair a meeting with chief ministers of various states to take stock of the COVID situation in the country.
माननीय प्रधानमंत्री लगातार कोविड के कालखंड को आप पीछे देखिए, दर्जनों बार उन्होंने विभिन्न प्रकार के तमाम मुद्दों को लेकर के कोविड से जुड़े हुए माननीय मुख्यमंत्री जी से भी, राज्यों के मुख्यमंत्री जी से भी, सभी राज्यों के जितने भी प्रमुख लोग हैं पदाधिकारी सम्मत रहते हैं और प्रधानमंत्री जी ने एक-एक चीज की चिंता की है बारीकी से.
Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan has assured that the export of COVID-19 vaccines to other countries is not being done at the expense of Indian citizens. In its collaborative fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, India has scaled several peaks. The cumulative total of recovered patients has crossed 1 crore 10 lakh. With this, the recovery rate currently stands at 96.65%. The fatality rate stands at the lowest in the world at 1.39%. Nitendra Singh's report, DD India. Meanwhile, India is scaling peak after peak in its COVID-19 inoculation drive. Over 3 crore 48 lakh 59,000 vaccine doses have been administered till now. As per the provisional report till 7 p.m. on Tuesday, a total of 3 crore 48 lakh 59,345 vaccines doses have been administered across the country so far. These include 75 lakh 1,590 healthcare workers who have taken the first dose and 45 lakh 40,776 healthcare workers receiving their second dose. 75 lakh 91,670 frontline workers have also received their first dose, while 16 lakh 28,096 frontline workers have received their second shot. 1 crore 14 lakh 54,104 beneficiaries more than 60 years of age and 21 lakh 43,109 beneficiaries aged between 45 and above with specific comorbidities. A total of 19 lakh 11,913 vaccine doses were given till 7 p.m. on Tuesday. That's the 60th day of the nationwide vaccine program in India.
After the national headlines, we get to international updates in our segment Across the Globe. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced his visit to India next month. Speaking in Britain's Parliament, the UK Prime Minister said that he would be visiting India in April for strengthening ties with the world's largest democracy. Johnson said that his government wanted to strengthen relations with countries outside Europe, and for this, they have invited India, Australia and South Korea to the G7 summit. The G7 summit will be held in Cornwall from 11 till 13th of June. G7 is an intergovernmental organization consisting of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, United Kingdom and the United States.
Britain will remain unswervingly committed to NATO and preserving peace and security in Europe. And from this secure basis, we will seek out friends and partners wherever they can be found, building a coalition for openness and innovation and engaging more deeply in the Indo-Pacific. I have invited the leaders of Australia, South Korea and India to attend the G7 summit in Carbis Bay in June. And I'm delighted to announce that I will visit India next month to strengthen our friendship with the world's biggest democracy.
But an update now on the situation in Myanmar. A group of protesters demonstrating against the military rule in Myanmar lobbed petrol bombs on a bridge in the city of Yangon on Tuesday, setting makeshift barricades on fire. According to the United Nations Human Rights Office, at least 149 people have been killed in Myanmar since the Feb 1st coup, as security forces used live ammunition against protesters and bystanders. According to the United Nations Food Agency, the political and economic crisis over the Feb 1st overthrow of Aung San Suu Kyi's elected government could also force the poor into hunger as food and fuel prices rise. Also, martial law has been imposed in parts of Yangon and the military commanders would also take administration of districts and courts.
The United Nations Human Rights Office said on Tuesday that at least 149 people have been killed in Myanmar since 1st of February coup as security forces use live ammunition against protesters and bystanders. Also, UN Human Rights spokesperson Ravina Shamdasani told a briefing in Geneva that they call on the military to stop killing and detaining the protesters. She added that some 37 journalists have been arrested in Myanmar, including 19 who remain in detention, while 5 people are known to have died in custody.
Well, a quick look at updates on COVID-19 from across the world. The global COVID-19 cases tally, which has crossed the 12 crore mark 3 days ago, is now stands at 12 crore 12 lakh. The tally of recoveries stand at 9 crore 77 lakh. Death toll surging now close to the 27 lakh mark, 26 lakh 81,000 deaths being reported. United States continues to be the worst affected both in terms of infections as well as fatalities. In terms of infections, the number now crossing 3 crore 1 lakh cases of COVID-19. The death toll inching closer towards the 5 lakh 50,000 mark, currently standing at 5 lakh 49,000 deaths.
Europe's medicines regulator has said that there is no indication that the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine has caused blood clots, as the list of countries temporarily halting the vaccine's rollout over safety concerns continues to grow. European Medical Authority and other international medical agencies have said that the benefits of getting shots into arms outweigh any potential risks. On Tuesday, Cyprus, Luxembourg, Latvia and Sweden became the latest European nations to suspend its use, while Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Sweden, Belgium, Portugal, Ireland and the Netherlands also Indonesia have paused the use of AstraZeneca's vaccine as a precautionary measure. Still, the EMA's safety committee is investigating whether there is any possible link between Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine and a small number of blood clots in the vaccinated people. It is slated to release its findings during an extraordinary meeting called by the agency tomorrow. The continent confronts a third wave of the pandemic spurred by variants of the virus. With AstraZeneca not the only vaccine available in Europe, countries continue to undertake vaccine drive using other authorized vaccines, including the BioNTech, Pfizer, Moderna and Johnson & Johnson. Denmark was the first to press pause on AstraZeneca vaccine last Thursday as a precautionary measure, while Danish health officials investigate potential side effects after one person who developed a blood clot after vaccination died. Norway, Iceland and Bulgaria quickly followed suit. Notably, the number of deaths from COVID-19 across Europe passed 9 lakh on Tuesday, making it the deadliest region.
While the investigation is ongoing, we are still firmly convinced that the benefits of the AstraZeneca vaccine in preventing COVID-19 with its associated risk of hospitalization and death outweigh the risk of these side effects. These are very rare thrombo events or blood clots. We need to evaluate these very, very carefully. At the ad hoc meeting today, we will have a further update. But as I said, it's Thursday when we expect the evaluation to conclude. EMA is taking this situation very, very seriously, and we will continue to make sure that the European population is informed about the ongoing analysis of this assessment.
Well, China has remained evasive on the utility and genuineness of its so-called facilitating measures for visa to foreigners in countries which are not using Chinese vaccines. The Chinese embassy in New Delhi said on Tuesday it will start issuing visas to foreigners who need to travel to China, but only if they have taken a Chinese-made COVID-19 vaccine. This rule will make it difficult for Indians to get Chinese visas since India has not approved the use of Chinese-made vaccines in the country. The Chinese embassy statement did not specify if Beijing is in talks with New Delhi to make its vaccines available in India. China also does not recognize other COVID-19 vaccines. On Monday, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman told reporters that foreign vaccine producers could file a request with the relevant Chinese authorities for a decision to consider them for international travel. It is also not clear whether the new rule applies to students, who are the largest chunk of Indians staying in China. More than 20,000 students are waiting for China's nod for more than a year to return to the universities. Chinese embassies in many countries which do not use Chinese vaccines have issued such notices, but did not specify how residents in those countries can get the Chinese jabs or whether China approached them to recognize the Chinese vaccines. Without these clarifications, these announcements rather sound hollow.
Alright, after the international updates, we get to Web Review, wherein a colleague joins us every day and takes us through what all has been put forth in the various social media platforms.
Well, we got our colleague Amrit Pal standing by to give us the latest. Amrit, good morning. Please take it over.
Good morning, Anil and Preeti. Well, apart from what you put out in your show today, I've chosen to lead with the report from the Times of India about UK's Prime Minister's proposed visit to India at the end of April. The paper says UK's Johnson to visit India at the end of April as part of policy tilt. This is a report filed from London which says Prime Minister Boris Johnson will visit India end of April, which will be his first major international trip after Brexit, to boost UK opportunities in the region. Remember, he had planned a visit to India in January, which had to be postponed because of COVID. So he's interested to visit India before the G7 summit takes place in the United Kingdom, where he's invited the Indian Prime Minister to attend. He'll be looking at trade deals with India because after UK's exit from EU, they're looking at trade partners world over, but also he's talking about a policy tilt with a renewed pivot moving from Europe to the Indo-Pacific, where he sees Japan, Australia and India as important partners, and the area a very important area for in terms of geopolitical geostrategic shift. UK believes that this region holds a lot of strategic importance because important sea lanes pass through this, and what countries are trying to do is ensure fair and free movement of traffic in the region. Well, the other story that the Mint has printed, it says UK to expand nuclear arsenal over 40% in the biggest shift since Cold War. UK is to expand nuclear arsenal over 40% in its biggest shift since Cold War. It will allow its nuclear warhead stockpile by more than 40% to ensure its security in a more risky global environment as it faces technological threats. Now, a defense review, a security and defense review, has in the UK has said that the earlier cap of 180 by mid 2020 period stands scrapped, and now the number would rise to 260. Remember, the 2010 Defense and Security Review had decided to cut its stockpile to about 180 from an estimated 195, but now citing threats from new emerging nuclear powers, they are saying that, and also countries which have nuclear capability from which UK feels threats, and terrorist organizations which they believe could launch effective nuclear attack by 2030. UK needs to ensure its security, and that is the reason why it is proposed that they increase this cap on the nuclear stockpiles. The Hindus printed a story, China to allow Indian travelers only if they take Chinese vaccines. As you also noticed in your show, the Chinese embassy issued a statement saying that Indians will wanting to travel to China will have to take the Chinese jab. But now that has created a situation because Chinese vaccines are not available outside China, at least not in India, because India has not authorized Chinese vaccines. So how will they be actually delivered remains a question. Without that, the Chinese have said a visa cannot be issued, though the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson yesterday said that they're looking at mutual recognition of vaccines with other countries, but that could take a long time to actually fructify. Till that, the future of many Indian students, over 23,000 of them study in China, and many returned home last year due to the pandemic, now await their return. So it's unclear how they will be able to return to China. The other story that the National Herald has printed, Imran Khan government incapable of running the country, says the Pakistan Supreme Court. Now, the Pakistan Supreme Court yesterday expressed its displeasure with the Imran Khan government, saying it was incapable of running the country or taking decisions. This came over a case of local body elections in which the center had to, the federal government had to conduct a certain census. But that census was not conducted. This irked the Supreme Court judges who made this statement, saying, why is the government not being able to take a decision? Are they incapable of running the country? So that's what's made it to the newspapers and web portals around the world and in India. And back to you, Anil and Preeti.
All right, Amra, thank you for joining in with a web review this morning.
Well, let's now move over to our next segment, that's taking a look at all business buzz. But the US stock market lacked direction for much of the day yesterday as the S&P 500 and Dow Jones Industrial Average closed lower, with the investors awaiting the results of the Federal Reserve's two-day policy meeting. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 128.3 points to 32,825, and the S&P 500 lost 6.37 points to close at 3,962.57. The Nasdaq Composite added 11.86 points to close at 13,471. In the prior session, S&P 500 and Dow Jones Industrial Average closed at record highs due to the optimism over the 1.9 trillion fiscal stimulus package and the ongoing vaccination drives.
And now we'll get you sports updates. In cricket, opener Jos Buttler smashed a scintillating 83 not out of 52 balls as England clinched the third T20 of the 5-match series to go 2-1 up in Ahmedabad on Tuesday. Chasing a moderate target of 157, England achieved the win with 8 wickets and 10 balls to spare. Earlier, India once again suffered a horrendous start after losing the toss, setting up the recipe for a disaster in the third game of the series. After losing top 3 inside the power play overs, it was Kohli's unbeaten 77 that dragged Team India to 156 for 6, but the top order collapse was followed by a weak performance from the middle order.
Well, Manchester City moved into the Champions League quarter-finals for the 4th successive season by completing a comprehensive 4-0 aggregate victory over German club Borussia Mönchengladbach. Leading 2-0 after the first leg, Man City's Kevin De Bruyne and Gundogan scored 2 goals, leading to a 4-0 aggregate win.
Real Madrid reached the Champions League quarter-finals for the first time in 3 seasons with a clinical second-leg performance against Atalanta. Leading 1-0 from the first leg, Real doubled their advantage in the tie when Karim Benzema scored in 34th minute and skipper Sergio Ramos added Real's second from the penalty spot in the 60th minute.
Well, time now to take a look at the weather in your cities along with a satellite image.
A fresh western disturbance as a cyclonic circulation lies over North Pakistan and neighborhood above mean sea level. Because of this, isolated scattered rainfall and snowfall is likely over western Himalayan region, that is Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh, Gilgit-Baltistan and Muzaffarabad, Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand tomorrow and day after tomorrow over adjoining plains of northwest India on 18th and 19th of March. Isolated thunderstorms and lightning is also likely over Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh, Gilgit-Baltistan and Muzaffarabad and Himachal Pradesh today and over adjoining plains of northwest India tomorrow. And because of the interaction between mid-level westerlies and lower-level easterlies, isolated to scattered rainfall is likely over Madhya Pradesh during the next 5 days. And now a quick look at temperatures in your part of the country. That's it in this edition of Breakfast News this Wednesday morning. But before we go, we leave you with this reminder every day to make sure that you take full precautions against COVID-19. Wear a mask, wear it properly and correctly. Remember, that is the best precaution you can have against COVID-19, protecting yourself and also people around you.
Well, life is what you create, and we leave you with images of great artistic work by great names in the world of art. Take a look, enjoy these beautiful pieces of art. They go under the hammer on the 23rd of this month. Watch it. Have a safe and wonderful day ahead. Bye-bye.